So, do you think this idea of the zero sum game myth is why movements like Occupy Wall Street and stuff like that gain so much attention? Is because business is seen as like an evil deed, and if someone has money, then clearly they took it from someone else. Do you think that's why
Yeah.
those things are often so kind of popular?
I think there may be three things I would want to highlight on this. Uh, the first thing is the zero sum view. That is just an economic fallacy, a misunderstanding, sometimes used as a lie. But let me say, be benevolent and say it's a misunderstanding. Then we educate people on it. The second is a view that comes largely out of Marxism. I mean, it has roots before that, but it's largely out of Marxism, and that is a humanity zero sum game that says it's a conflict view of society, that says it's me against you and you against me, survival of the fittest, if you wish. There's a
Right.
deep issue with this, in that, it's labor against capital, it's management against employees. It goes on. It's men against women. It's one country against another country, and so on.
Hmm.
This is demonstrably not true. An alternative would be to have a view of complementarity in the world. There will never be labor that doesn't need capital, and there will never be capital that doesn't need labor. The world is designed in a beautiful complementarity if we pay attention to it and we seek it. And that's where the real long-term solutions lie. Nature shows us a beautiful spectacle of complementarity. It's the balance of nature, in a sense. And on the one hand, you can look at this as a fight in a sort of Marxist way, but I would prefer to look at this as a symbiosis, as win-win solutions, and as complementarity. And so this is something that is in business, on any team it is like this, and on any even in nations in the world. As soon as you're getting into an us versus them, a conflict view, a zero sum view, then you end up destroying value ultimately. And I think this is something that we're dealing with a lot right now in our society, that everybody is pitted against everybody else. There's this group versus that group, and so on. Just the whole interaction that we're having it becomes a zero sum game.
You're saying that business almost demands a complementarian system, and whenever that complementarian
Yeah.
system isn't there, then then it actually just starts to fall apart.
It's beautiful. I think business is actually such a great solution for prosperity and peace. So, on the first hand, business, because it is the pizza shop, is the solution to poverty. And so I'm big in promoting enterprise solutions to poverty. But I also think that business is a great way to promote peace
Yeah.
in neighborhoods, inside countries, between countries. In a way, the free market is like that. Now, I'm not saying it solves every problem, and there's issues of movement of labor and access to things, but that is something that we can actually solve by looking at complementarity and finding win-win solutions, and leaving this conflict view, this either or, behind us, and pursue a both end, uh, you know, pizzeria kind of approach to our problems, where we find the win-win solutions.
Now, speaking of win-win solutions, um, something, and also complementarian solutions. Something I really appreciated in your book is how you mentioned the motor mile, and I've always found this interesting that you always see, clumps of restaurants all together, clumps of car dealerships, like you said, every major city has the motor mile, and then Silicon Valley. So why is it that they provide mutual benefits from their
Yeah.
competition?
So it's a concept called co-opetition. And this is, again, even competitors um, are actually complementary.
Mhm.
I mean, the motor mile is an example, but even if you just go into one store, if you have a store yourself, did you ever wonder why there isn't cereal aisle? I mean, how much cereal could you buy? And the truth is actually that if you have more choice, you will actually buy more of either one. um, the motor mile is a beautiful thing because it creates an event that if somebody buys a car, they say, well, I'm going to go to the Motor Mile and I can just see 5 of these dealerships at the same time. It's like it's the shopping mall. It's the same concept. You will
Hmm.
actually increase overall sales for everybody by bunching car dealerships together, or stores like we do in a shopping center. It's the very same concept of co-opetition, and there's a lot of benefits when you do a Motor Mile or a shopping center or an industry cluster like that. There's a lot of benefits that come to bear because the actual competition against each other is smaller in its effect than the cooperation you end up having between the companies. But let me say a word of caution there. So I talk a lot about the free market, and I have to say, and I think it comes through in the book a bit, but I want to stay positive in the book. But here, just as a side note, the free market is under attack. We are, to a large extent, I don't want to say to a large extent across the board, but in many industries, in many areas of industries, we are moving more sort of towards in the book I call it a crony capitalism, that
Hmm.
larger companies get larger and larger and then collude with the government, or maybe collude is too strong of a word, but influence the government to write rules and regulations that lock out the smaller guys.
Yeah.
That's going to be the end of the auto mile if only one company owns it, because then
Right.
the true competition leaves the market. And that's one of the central ideas that I actually propose in this book, is that if we get rid of the co-opetition, meaning the competition, the cooperation as well, but the competition of it, that we have free access into markets, that everybody can start a company and start to compete, then it's actually not the companies that lose as much as the consumer that uses. We as users lose. And it's worrisome to me that many of us do not vote with our feet. Of actually, we only buy from very, very large companies that dominate everything. But I think it behooves us, and it's in our interest to actually walk to the smaller suppliers, to the small business, um, to the mom and pop shop, but also to the startup and so on, and vote with our dollars. I
Yeah.
think that every dollar in your wallet that you use, in a sense, has more power than the vote you do in a presidential election. Is it what I would
Wow.
claim as one person? But because the dollar you spend, the cash you're spending, the cash you're spending on your purchases has a super vote. Um,
Yeah.
and and for each company that you're giving it to, you're a much larger contributor than you would be as one person in 200, 300 million people. That's why I'm sort of making that
Yeah.
comparison.
That's a really great, kind of admonishment to vote with our feet and our wallet, to support the companies that we want to remain competitive. Because
Yeah,
I know back
yeah,
in Virginia, where I'm from, there's a lot of areas that have like one cable provider, and that's it. Like you pay this guy, or you don't have internet.
yeah.
That's the only way it works. Everybody like wants a choice, you
I
know.
predict that if you only have one supplier of something, um, then there's probably a license involved and some kind of government connection that allows you to do it versus others. In other words, there is a limitation of competition involved.
Yeah.
And that always sounds good in the beginning, but in the long term, the user, the consumer, is going to get the
That's
shorter end
right.
of the stick on this one. And so
That's
it
right, in the
behooves
long
us as
run.
consumers to be educated and to vote with your dollars, vote with the dollars. But it's tough because it's so convenient to go buy everything at the largest
At
retailer,
one
or go
place,
buy
yeah.
everything, the easiest way. Yeah, but I think we do ourselves and our economy a favor by intentionally buying from smaller companies and give them a boost.